Welcome to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco, bringing you interviews with industry experts and regular folks who tested the job search waters and succeeded, and strategies to tell your story and land you job interviews in 60 days, guaranteed. Here's your host, Virginia Franco.
Hello, everyone. This is Virginia Franco on the Resume Storyteller podcast, and I am super excited to introduce my next guest, career transition and LinkedIn expert Scott Angler. Scott is the owner and founder of Build Your Own Brand, or BYOB, coaching and consulting, and he helps individuals and groups with career transition and LinkedIn personal branding services. He is an expert on career transition and optimizing LinkedIn, and is the author of a couple of different publications, The Job Interview and Legends of the Recruiting and Career World. And he spent years working alongside the world's top LinkedIn influencers and career experts on how to optimize LinkedIn for professional networking and career development. He's been featured on Recruiter.com, Human Talent Network, KTLA Los Angeles, and was selected by JobScan this year as a top 35 influencer for job seekers to follow on LinkedIn. Scott, welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me. I'm excited as well.
So, I gave a quick intro, but I'd love to hear in your own words, give us a quick overview of how you help job seekers.
Sure. Well, job seekers today have a different process of getting the challenge a lot of the people I work with and more seasoned professionals are having is they haven't had to navigate that part of the job search. So a lot of what my business has evolved to is, even though I love taking job seekers all the way from A to Z, from the time they come to me to the time they land the job, a lot of the portion of my work is focused on the branding. How do they attract the right opportunities to them on sites like LinkedIn, where 95% of recruiters are? And how do I help them shift really the mindset of a different type of job search where they're not spending all their time and spinning their wheels, doing online job applications that yield like a 1% response rate? And how do they optimize their presence and profile on LinkedIn, where, it continues to show about 95% of recruiters are actively looking for top talent, and more than that are sourcing candidates for job interviews. So that's a lot of what I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you fall into this role? Obviously, you didn't graduate from college thinking I'm going to be a LinkedIn influencer. How did you come to that?
Yeah, they didn't have a major of studying LinkedIn when I was in college.
No.
I don't even know if it existed yet when I was in college. It might have just started when I was graduating. But yeah, it really was an accident. I mean, I say that on my profile, but it's true. I started hopping on LinkedIn when I was finishing up graduate school to find a job in my own industry, which is the field of counseling, and really just kind of fell into it for some reason. I don't know why, but me and that site just seemed to get along really well. I was able to find my first industry job, on LinkedIn within the first couple of months using it. So I don't know why, I just had a natural knack for that site, which is weird because I'm not very social media savvy by nature. And what happened was, in that process, this was back when the economy was, taking the deep dive crash. So I was helping other people use LinkedIn as well. And I kept learning how all these, my friends and other professionals had no idea how to use the site. And I was like, really? It's been kind of easy for me, so I wasn't trying to rub it in. I was just like showing them what to do. And then over time, when I started writing my books, I was learning from blessed to just have people like JT O'Donnell and Lou Adler interview with me and teach me the ropes. And I was just learning from all these people, and just, it seemed like my learning curve was going so fast that people started approaching me on the site, and to the point where, LinkedIn hired me last year to help job seekers after years of just figuring stuff out with my clients and for myself. And so that's kind of why I do what I do now.
Yeah. I always love to hear. Seems like most of us in this career field came to it because we were finding our own jobs and what worked and what didn't. And then we launched our own companies that way. So
exactly.
You and I talked a little bit before the podcast about a select group of people. I know I work a lot with older Gen Xers, younger, baby boomers that are entering, testing the job search waters. And it's, what do you see as a couple of challenges that you see facing that group that maybe you don't see with other clients of yours?
Sure. Let's talk about that. I mean, everybody has the challenge, because I work with, I'd say, primarily 45 to 65-year-olds as well. which it sounds like you tapped into. And the first thing is what this group has a real challenge with is that they haven't had to look for jobs very much, and they've kind of been set where they were. And the ways, I know the storytelling is a big thing for you too. So they haven't learned that part of branding. In fact, they learned a different way, what I call like the cardiologist report reading, which is like a very dry and dense way to describe what they do. And so because they learned a different way to do things that doesn't work very well digitally, or I would even argue like if you're just talking to someone one-on-one and you're like experienced, seasoned professional with, a tangible assets of, communication and strong verbal skills, and you're just like kind of
adjective rich.
Yeah, and it becomes very dense to read as well. So that's the one thing. The second thing, which I think listeners would really want to hear about, is this overqualified or too old thing going on that so many people are really sensitive to right now, that they're feeling that they're being discriminated against, and that is the reason that they're not getting jobs. So that's a big, big thing that I see in the space right now.
Just sort of that mindset going into it. That's interesting. What do you find that your clients are most surprised by when they do enter the job search market and then ultimately reach out to you?
That's a great question. So if I'm understanding your question correctly, what are they most surprised about?
Yeah, is there something that just sort of catches them off guard? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the first part of what I was saying with the branding is a huge thing, right? Because they're like, oh, I didn't know that I have to like kind of freshen this up and people don't know who I am, and that part too. But the other part is that they're really convinced that there's just no good jobs anymore. They're really convinced. Something in them, their experiences, the types of opportunities they're attracting, even the people that I'm working with, executives, they're getting a lot of opportunities. They're just not aligned ones with what they're wanting. So they're just convinced there's no good opportunities. It's kind of like, the woman that's like, there's just no good guys out there anymore. Like that's kind of what it feels like when people are coming to me.
So pretty discouraged, and don't recognize that the way you describe yourself is completely different than the way they were taught.
Exactly. So there's nothing to be ashamed about. They just learned something different.
Okay. All right. So talk to me about I know what you coach your folks on, embracing a completely different mindset from the branding to the strategy that they engage in. Can you explain to us sort of, I know you spend hours doing this with people, but can you give us sort of the high level 60-second commercial on it?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, it is really an inner game thing, and it's a realignment of what they're wanting and tapping back into the greatness in them that they're not seeing anymore. And unfortunately, their current experiences are kicking them down. And that's part of the problem, right? If they were getting all these great opportunities, they'd feel better about themselves, but they're hearing things like, oh, you're too overqualified and you're just not a good fit. And they're not getting any concrete feedback. And so they're really valid at that point, right? They're like, well, my experiences are showing me this. So what I said the other day was like, I help, my clients and baby boomer-ish job seekers kick those limiting beliefs they have in the teeth. So here's the thing.
Violent, but I like it.
It is a little violent. Well, we got to get a little depth if we want to break through this.
Exactly.
So, a lot of times when people come to me, their thing is they have this misconception that overqualified always equals too old. They're reading into that, right? And addressing the white elephant in the room, is there some types of, maybe biases and prejudices in the job search? Of course there is. There is with gender. There is with, sexual orientation. There is with a whole bunch of different things, right?
Sure. Yeah, there's tons of barriers.
Yeah. And so this just happens to be one that is getting bigger and bigger and bigger right now in our society. And so they often have this feeling too of directly being threatened by the millennials, right? They're like, well, I'm the slow moving machine that costs more to operate and this, that, and the other. And then there's like these quick, nimble things out there that'll work for a lower cost. And that's why I'm not, getting the job I want, is because I cost too much to hire and I'm overqualified and I'm too slow, right? So these are all their ideas and thoughts. I'm not saying that's the truth, right?
Yeah.
I'm just saying that's what they're coming to me with. So here's a little equation I wrote as I was kind of preparing yesterday is your attitude and your attributes are more important than talent alone. So what I help remind them of, it's not like, oh, I convince them of anything. I just remind them of their greatness. And so what I've noticed with a lot of my clients, and again, there's obviously exceptions with millennials and Gen Xers and baby boomers.
Sure.
But what I notice that I love about the demographic I work with is the characteristics. They're hard workers. They're willing to learn new things still. They're passionate about what they do. They're committed. And I don't know about you, Virginia, but as a business owner, I'd way rather any day of the week hire somebody that is passionate about the cause of my business, is willing to work hard to learn new things, and has a positive attitude and can bring, works well in a team and has all these great attributes about him and a great attitude, than someone that's the most talented software developer in the world and has a horrible attitude, doesn't show up to work on time, is insubordinate, and brings the team down. Any day of the week, I would hire the first example.
And
I would pay them what they're worth.
How do you recommend that coming out, in the LinkedIn branding? Where do you place those soft skills while also showing expertise to say, I am all these things, but, I also know my stuff?
Well, that is a fine art indeed. And so that is where people hire me to do that, because the process is, if you have a 20-year plus career, is extracting all the highlights and accomplishments of what you do and how to weave those together in a way that's automatically showing, the value that you bring over your competition. So, for example, somebody that's worked for like 2 Fortune 500 organizations and has maybe driven that company, increase of 20% per quarter for like the 3 years that they were like, the executive there, whatever they've done over the course of their career, you could already see that not only do they have the real-time experience, but they've navigated different, industries and marketplaces and cultures. So a lot of these people that come to work with me, they're super, super impressive. And like I say, they're all stars, but they're just not selling themselves and bragging appropriately because they haven't had to. And then they've had assistants doing a lot of their stuff for them. They've had the company and the marketing team bragging for them. Once they're on their own, it becomes very challenging. But, getting back to what I was saying, when they're able to effectively sell themselves, that's where the decision not only becomes really easy for me, why I would hire this person over this person that's 20 years younger and is going to start off at a much lower salary, but I'm going to pay this person a premium price because I see the value that they bring.
And so you teach them how to sell themselves, not just online, but in person. And that ability to convey their value, articulate their value, really overcomes the barriers that they've been concerned about from the beginning.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, that's coming up for me right now is I've noticed the people I work with are what I call like contribution-focused people. They're compassionate. And I find that the more contribution-focused the individual, the worse they are at selling themselves. I mean, the worse. And I'm the same way. It's taken a long time for me, and still, I had a branding coach as well to like highlight what I do and to be able to brag appropriately and to stand in that spotlight. They're quick to say, oh, well, it wasn't just me, it was my team. It's like,
it wasn't just me, it was my team, right? But it's still,
but you're the one looking for the job right now.
Right. No, you're right. The contributory roles are as important as leading the whole kit and caboodle. So.
Yeah, so it's like a basketball player saying, well, the whole team won the championship. They're like, right, but like, how many points did you score average per game as you guys won that? So there's a blend, though. They could get recommendations from team members, and that's something I work with them on as well, as really tapping into their network, especially for executives getting people that they were overseeing to give recommendations as well. That's a big one. But really, to come back to what you're saying is, that's the piece that they need to really to bring in, because the soft skills, unfortunately, aren't going to get them in the door of many opportunities in most cases. And then really what it is the matter, too, of being selective themselves and wanting to work for organizations that align with their personality. That's the other thing, is they're selling themselves short. They're just trying to take any next job. It's like, no, well, if you're a contribution, global impact type of person, and you're really compassionate and you believe in people and all this and work-life balance, then don't go interview with organizations that aren't that way. Right.
No, you're right, because something that aligns with who you are. But to your point, I think what you need to understand what you bring to the table before you can figure out what kind of companies align with your personality. A lot of people just don't even know. They don't even recognize that about themselves.
Right, exactly. And they really haven't had to. And so that becomes the challenge, is they're kind of standing on their own in a lot of ways. Of course, we have your network to tap into, but still, it feels really scary and isolating at first for these people. And they're not, a lot of people I work with are still working at a job. So that it's not like they have their assistant to help them with some of these these areas.
At the present time. That's true. Well, what advice would you give someone that hasn't hired a coach, hasn't hired a writer, around advice you would give to someone thinking about making a career move? Where would they start?
Honestly, they would start with learning what works and doesn't work in today's marketplace and jobs. I think most of them need to be convinced that truly, from all the online ways to look for jobs, LinkedIn is still number one. While that's not the one and only way they could get a job, I think they need to understand what they're dealing with. And then, my advice is hire an expert that knows how to navigate through this, because you're going to save yourself a lot of time and stress. Yeah, just, especially people that aren't, naturally good at, if you're listening to this and that you aren't a natural at selling yourself. It's one thing to sell a product. It's another thing to sell yourself. It's a whole different ballgame. So if you already know that, I really say, trust your instinct, trust what I'm saying, trust what Virginia's saying, just hire a professional.
Right.
Make things a lot easier.
And you bring up a good point that there's lots of different ways to get a job. I mean, you can apply online, you can try to work with recruiters, you can leverage LinkedIn, but it's understanding which ones give you the greatest return on that investment is really important to understand, because you can devote the majority of your energy on something with a horrible ROI, and then you've just wasted time, or you've lost a lot of time.
Yeah, actually, all of my clients consistently, they spend less time looking for a job when they work with me, significantly. In fact, I think the average is 15 hours a week to 2 to 3, and they get better results. Because they're not spending 3 hours on because they're not spending 3 hours per online job application personality assessment, spinning their wheels, responding to all these opportunities on all these job search boards that ping them and filtering through those. It's stop doing that. You're wasting it. It feels like you're getting somewhere, but you're not.
Yeah, so it is. It's a false sense of accomplishment when you're just flying to so many.
It is. Now, it's a phenomenon.
I had heard, and curious if you know what the numbers are on this. I heard 5 years ago, that you had to apply to 100 jobs to get 5 responses online. Do you think that's accurate still, or do you think it's even less?
It's worse. So last year, Social Talent said less than 1%. And I know when I interviewed Dick Bowles, who passed away last year, the author of What Color Is Your Parachute, he told me that it was a 2%. So for every 100 applications, you'd get 2 responses, not even 2 jobs, 2 responses. And that was in 2015.
Okay. So it's 1 to 2% at best.
Yeah. And those aren't even jobs that most people want, is what they find.
Right. Okay. All right. And what do you think is the return on investment when you leverage LinkedIn to its fullest?
Oh my gosh. When people do it right, I mean, I've had this one lady I worked with last year. She emailed me a week later. She's like, Scott, I got 3 recruiters reaching out to me about 3 opportunities in the last week about what I want to do. And I'm like, I told you, because she had a pretty, good niche of what she did for work. And I'm like, I think that if you understand how to optimize LinkedIn, you're going to attract a lot of opportunities. And she had a new job within a couple months.
Wow.
Okay. And so, I've had clients this one guy was every single week he was getting a new opportunity. After 4 weeks of working on his branding, you got to be active on the site too. It's people think that they're just going to do this and then
slap it up and wait.
Yeah, there's a process, you know what I mean? And so I try to be clear with that with people, but once you understand, I had this client recently, she's like, Scott, once I understood that it's all about telling a story in my profile and my profile summary, she's like, it shifted my mindset. And she had one of the best profiles I've seen of any job seeker I've worked with. She happened to be a good writer, which, helped her cause.
Right, that helped. Yeah, sure. Okay.
But once you grasp the principles is what I mean, and start practicing this.
What advice would you give? Any different advice to someone who is versus thinking about jumping into a job search? They've been at it and they are highly, highly discouraged. Just their job search is not proving fruitful. where should they start?
So I think the answer is going to be the same, as they should start by asking for help, and the right help, asking not for help from their friend that doesn't know this industry and marketplace right now, but ask for help from a professional and really be willing to see things a little differently, because what we learn just doesn't work that well anymore.
Right. And I know that, not everyone has the funds to do this, but I know you have a YouTube channel. There's lots of online resources to help you sort of begin to understand the mindset change that needs to happen. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. When I was job searching, I didn't have any money, to spend. I would rent books from the library. I remember watching all those videos when I got the Career Premium membership. This was back when Lindsay, I don't know if Lindsay still does the trainings, but I watched those videos and I took copious notes down and started applying them. And I find that so many people don't do that. They just sit around and complain, and they have all these resources. I'm talking about the Career Premium site that they could use, and they're not using whatever they can to their advantage. And so, I don't have as much sympathy anymore for people that aren't at least willing to use the tools that they have, right? So there are tools that you could use for a low cost. $30 a month is not a lot of money, for the majority of the world. And so that's what I did, was $30. Look, I could afford that.
Okay. So you recommend absolutely paying for LinkedIn when you are job searching?
When I used it, all I could say is that when I used it, this was years ago, it was a great investment for me. It still seems to be a really worthwhile investment, especially in the group, because, you have people like myself and you and Adrian and Lisa posting all the time, and people interacting, and successful job seekers coming back to share what they did. I think that alone is of high value. It's the most active group, I think, on all of LinkedIn.
It is, of all of them. No, I agree.
On all of LinkedIn.
Premium group.
Yeah, that alone. And now they have this, you could see how it compare with other candidates. There's all these other things too that, LinkedIn Premium offers. You could use the LinkedIn Learning. I just think people don't take the time to utilize the resources of that group, and then they consequently just complain about it. That's what I see a lot of, at least.
Well, the analytics in my mind are just, you're right, $30 a month. That is, you get access to learning. You get the premium career group with people that are going through what you're going through, plus experts weighing in details about companies and people and roles. And if you're willing to do some sleuthing and take some time, there's a lot in that site that can help you for a pretty good value.
Yeah. I don't know anything else out there that for the amount that you're paying offers more, to be honest.
Yeah. No, I agree. I actually never thought of it that way. And I recommend it to people that are even passive job seekers because of the analytics that you can use.
And now, I don't know if you noticed this, but now there's this new feature where you could, when you look at jobs, you could see who you know at that job, and you could
you could ask for a referral.
Yeah, you could ask for a referral from that person, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah.
Assuming you do it correctly or finesse.
Right. No. They're recognizing the power of a referral, which is how most people get jobs. So what about the person? I get people like this all the time. I'm sure you do too. People that come to you and say, I could either be this or I could do that. I have all these skills. And I just don't know where. And how to write that on a resume is one thing, but LinkedIn and job search is a totally different thing when someone could really gun after a couple of different kinds of jobs.
Oh, you mean the multi-passionate entrepreneur like myself?
There you go. Or people that just, or maybe they want to focus on one, but they don't know, they don't want to pigeonhole themselves. I get that all the time.
Right. Well, I should have refrained from entrepreneur. I call it multi-passionate people, where we love a lot of things, right? I had more jobs at the age of 25 than any of my family members. Right. That's because I love so many things.
And a lot of people that are, late 30s, 40s, 50s, they had a couple jobs. And so the next, sometimes they're like, okay, I'm ready to do something new. Or they've been in the same role for a long time and they want to do something different and they don't know where it makes sense to go because they have so many different skills.
So these are my favorite people to work with because I could deeply empathize with their struggle, right? when you've done so many things and you can do so many different things well, then the challenge becomes, how the heck do I tie all the things I've done together in a way that's concise, succinct, and helps me get the opportunities I'm wanting? And that really is, I think, a lot of the value of what I bring to people, is helping draw that together. Because for me, it's impossible to do on my own. I cannot do that by myself.
You're right.
I need someone else.
Yeah, with
I'm
your
too
own blood,
close
sweat,
to
and
it.
tears. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. And, because I understand that personality so well, I understand how to get them focused. You know what I mean? Is like, okay, what do you want to do now? And really it's just a matter of showing people the paradox of expansion from that narrowing down and helping them have a focal point to start with. It's really just about, calming them down from this intense fear we have about only pigeonholing ourselves to one thing. It's like, no, I promise you that's not going to be the way it goes, but you need to have a focal point or else you're not going to attract any type of the right opportunities.
Give me an example of finding a focal point. You can use yourself as an example.
Sure. So I have a background in counseling. That's where I have my master's degree. I was a personal trainer. I've worked with kids as a behavioral interventionist. I've thrived in sales roles. I do branding now. I've done business consulting. There's so many things that I've done and, could point out with stats that I've done really well, that it becomes extremely difficult for okay, well, I like a lot of these things. I'm passionate about a lot of these things. Where do I go from here?
And those jobs sort of seem disjointed when you say I was an instructor and a mental health counselor. On the surface, they don't appear. It doesn't seem like a linear career trajectory.
Right. And so what I found for myself is, through getting my own coaching and working with people in career transition for so long, is there's a weaving. And once I was able to get a lot of this on paper, and this is a process I take my clients through, I was able to find that there was, even though the titles and roles were different, there were still patterns and principles that were the same that I excelled in. One of those was teaching. I love teaching at whatever role I have. The other one is understanding how to work with the individual very well. And some are motivated different and some have different learning styles. And so how to get the best out of the individual. And then, a lot of it was just peak performance. So whether I was a personal trainer or now, a career coach, is I'm dedicated to helping I like working with high achieving, highly ambitious people that want to get to the optimal place in their, either their physical health when I was a trainer, or now it's their career. And so how to get them to that optimal level. So there's a lot of this patterns that I found. And so that makes things a little bit easier once I could start breaking those things that I'm really passionate, down into core blocks like that. Then I'm not as freaked out about it doesn't necessarily have to be one job, but I feel better about putting my focus into doing one thing that at least as long as it encompasses all three of those things, then I'm good.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. So that's how you connect the dots with the patterns and principles that you've identified as consistent throughout all of these jobs.
Exactly. And then, that's where a good starting point happens. And, then what my clients find is something unfolds that they're feeling really good about. And then we just keep going in that direction.
Okay. And that's what I do too. But when you're writing a resume, you can sort of focus on one aspect or another. But LinkedIn, you have to be a little bit more all encompassing so that you can't change your LinkedIn based on who's seen it, where you can with a resume.
Yeah, that is a good point. And I think, the one thing that you can do is you could always copy and paste your LinkedIn profile and save it as a PDF or something like that. And then, you could tweak around your LinkedIn profile if you're just really decide halfway through that, you thought you wanted to do this, but you really think you want to do that now. You know what I mean? Okay. So there's always that option. Okay.
So if you were to ask someone, or if you were to tell someone, someone that's looking for a career changer, just a plain old job seeker, what are one or two tools that those people absolutely cannot be without during this journey? What would you say?
1 to 2 tools for today's job seeker.
Career changer, or just someone who knows what they want to do?
I think they need to get on LinkedIn right now. Regardless of, because that's going to be something that close to 100% of recruiters right now are using to source candidates. So even if they are networking locally, someone's going to look at their LinkedIn at some point during that process. I think that's just mandatory at this point. And the second thing would be to learn more about branding. really to understand what they need to do, because this isn't going anywhere right now. The job longevity is like under 5 years, and the times have just changed. And I really think that we need to embrace this reality right now and be prepared for it. So learning how to, brag appropriately, learning how to, update what you've been doing and track that stuff so you could be prepared, if you're going to make another shift in 5 years to sell yourself,
Right. So it's a skill you have to have, because chances are you're not going to be in the same job.
Yes. It's just a skill we need to develop right now. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree. And I think no matter what age you are, this is important, because even if you're, 45, a lot of people come to me and say, well, I just need one more job. And sometimes I'm like, well, it might be 2 or 3, because you're probably not going to stay in that job as long as you think. But things just don't happen that way anymore.
Exactly. And so I think it's just I know it's a challenging reality for a lot of people, but my thing is, well, the sooner you can learn that, I think it puts you above a lot of the other people that are just kind of still refusing to accept it and putting their heads in the sand.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, people love stories. Even people that have a hard time telling their own story love stories. So once you internalize that, I do think then it's more ingrained, and you use it for your interviewing. You use it throughout. And it doesn't feel like bragging. It feels like you're telling a story.
That's a great way to put it, too. I hadn't thought of the way you connected that, too, that it doesn't feel as much like you're bragging when you tell a story, but that is very true. That's a really good point, Virginia. Yeah.
You may use it. It's not trademarked.
Yeah.
Well, so Scott, you've done so much throughout your career. Tell me what is next for you and your coaching practice.
Great question. Well, if I'm really honest, what I'm trying to do right now is I'm looking to take what I've found from branding individuals and taking it to the workplace and doing it for employees. And so I'm looking to head more towards organizations and being like, look, here's how you're going to increase the performance of your company, but also your employee loyalty, is if you could highlight each person as an individual, but also as a great team, here's how you could do it. So I'm going to help their teams develop that skill of storytelling and branding. So even amongst from the leadership down, there's more cohesion there. And I really think that these tools that I've learned and experienced working with individuals for so long now are going to work just as well, if not better, in a company. And I really think that since it's such a different way of thinking, that it's really going to separate them from the rest and really promote an environment where people want to stay in. You know what I mean? How do they celebrate people?
Yeah, and I know that I read a lot of industry news, and companies are really struggling to retain people. And in a strong market that happens, they've got more options. So helping them to increase employee loyalty it saves them money, and it helps them, it impacts performance. I think that's very exciting.
Yeah, it's super exciting. And so I'm actually in the process right now of kind of looks like franchising myself and what I've done in the space of job searching right now. And, that involves having people kind of, teaching people what I've learned over the years and help people do, and formulating the best of my material. So when people come to me, I have people that take good care of them, you being one of them, and so having a pool of professionals that could take care of, people that I love that come to me and I want to support, I'm just looking to morph into a different spot of focus myself right now. And so I'm, what I want to do is use the best of what I've done over the years to still help people. I just don't need to be, the cool thing for me is that I actually don't need to be as involved, I don't think, anymore to do that still. Right.
No, that makes sense. That's exciting. So, speaking of people trying to find you, I've got your links to learn more that'll appear when this podcast is produced. But would you mind just sort of shouting out some social media sites? How can people find you? Where can they find you?
Well, obviously, the best place would be LinkedIn after all these discussions about it. So I'm the only Scott Engler in Oregon. My last name is Engler. I am, last time I checked, the only Scott Engler in Oregon, so I should not be difficult to find.
Okay.
And I would just recommend that they put, storytelling podcast in the headline, and whatever they're wanting to know, they're more than welcome to follow me on YouTube or on LinkedIn if they're just wanting like, hey, I want to, follow Scott for his articles and podcasts and stuff. That's great. If they're wanting to work with me privately or, have one of my resume writers or LinkedIn profile writers, work with them. Then I just put storytelling podcast, serious inquiry, something like that. And just, we could talk more about, how to help you do that.
Awesome. And what's your company's website, your business's website?
Oh, the business website is The Job Interview. That's 2 N's. So INNERVIEW.com.
Perfect. Well, Scott, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on. I love talking about storytelling, and it sounds like you do too. So I think you've given some really good actionable advice, and I hope it gets people thinking about this change because, like you said, it's here to stay. And once you embrace it, it starts to sort of flow out and it resonates across whatever you're doing.
I agree. I definitely agree.
Thanks again.
Thanks so much for having me. This was a great way to start my morning.
You've been listening to Resume Storyteller with Virginia Franco. To learn more about storytelling strategies to catch the eye of today's SKIM online readers, hiring and decision makers, go to www.virginiafrancoresumes.com.